I thought I would put together a video of these shoulders because I have ran into a number of things that if I had known prior to putting them together, it would have helped me navigate through this part of the project. So this is the version 2 of the shoulders. There could be other versions by the time you watch this video, so definitely always make sure you're working to the latest CAD. This is an 04B servo version, but it's got the 03 outside case. This is the 04 outside case prior to whatever change these companies did to go from this to this. Either servo will work for this, but the cover is a little different in the CAD, so make sure that you have that straight. I don't have the covers yet. A fan that has elected or offered to make them for Johnny, so hopefully we'll have those in the coming weeks and we can complete the shoulder assembly for Johnny 5. Okay, when you're putting this together, this is the first piece that goes on. Now the one I'm going to do for the video is I guess this would be his left shoulder. So yeah, this would be his left shoulder. So since it's his left, this will go in a downward position like that. So here's the right, somewhat semi-assembled. So you can see here, they're opposite of each other in regards to how they go together. Except for, I've got this backwards here because I've got these screws sitting on here. This actually goes in here like this. So the first thing you have to do is you have to put this plate on here. And I've scarred this up a little bit because I've learned a few things, and in doing so, it has scarred it up a little bit, but that's okay. You'll never see this once it's all assembled. It's got these screws that go in here, metric screws. So we'll put these in to get this kind of started here. And I've got this board off here for a reason, and I'll deal with that in a little while. But essentially the board has to come off in order to put the cover on. Here's the thing, when you put this on here, it has some play in it, right? And then when you go to put, well, this goes on first, and we'll put that on in a second. So this goes on here, and then once that goes on there, this has got to go on here. So it'll slide down that shaft, and it'll sit into that groove. This ring here will sit inside this. So what I have found is these parts are such a tight tolerance. A couple of things. One, this and this were very, very difficult to put together. Now, tight tolerances are good in some cases, like this bearing, for example. So this is the bearing here. And so this is the race, and then this is the inner race, I guess, if you will, and then you got the bearing that's in the middle. The bearing that's in the middle there. So, and it's a real nice fit. I mean, it's tight. But, you know, when I originally was going to go after this, I was going to force it in, basically. I was going to use my vise and push that in there, but you take the chance of damaging that bearing. And then Terry Andrews Jr. gave me a really great suggestion, and that was to heat up one part and cool down the other. So when you heat, things expand, and when you cool them down, they contract. So I cooled down. I think what I did first was I think I did the inside piece to the bearing. So I cooled down the inside piece so it would contract, and I heated up the bearing so it would expand. And I basically heated up that bearing by laying it on my printer bed while the printer was running. There was enough surface area I could just lay it off to the side, and it would just make that nice and warm. These two would then drop right together, no problem at all. And then of course as they cool, it becomes tight again and you can't get it out. So then I took the whole assembly and I cooled that down, and then I heated up the outer assembly, and then that just dropped right in. So that worked out really well. But you can't really do that when it comes to this. I mean, I guess you could, but I mean, trying to heat this whole thing up, it's a giant heat sink, and the parts become so big that it really doesn't become feasible. Not to mention, I want to be able to take them back apart, just in case I need to. So the problem is once, if you push this down on here and you press it, well, you got a very, very little amount of space in between here. And you can see I've got a little bit of some damage there because I had to get a screwdriver in there to try to pry this back up. So I didn't want to deal with that. So I took a Dremel and a little sander disc and or drum, and I went on the inside of this. Obviously this was not on here when I did it, but I went on this and I sanded that down just ever so slightly. And then I took this piece and I chucked it in the lathe, and I just put a piece of sandpaper on, piece of sandpaper on that, and just kind of took a little bit off of that. And it took a couple of iterations of, I didn't take much off of this. I really concentrated on taking it out of here. And I took just enough off that this sits down in there really nicely. And to demonstrate that a little bit more on this other one, so once the shaft's on there, you got some really tight tolerances. But you can see that just sits down there so nicely. Just nice and smooth, and it just sits right on there. And then you got these screws you'll put in to hold that down. So that worked out really nicely. So let's go ahead and put this shaft on there, or this, let's go ahead and put this on there. And this will sit on here like so. And then what I want to do is I'm going to Loctite these screws. It's not permanent for the most part. So just take this off here. Let's take these screws out. Enough to get some on the threads. Touch a little bit on the threads. Let's put this in the threads. A little bit on this one. Does not take much at all. Keep these from backing off though. Me having to come back in here just to fix that. So one thing on this project that I have definitely had to work around is threads that screws that like to back off. All right, so let's get this lined up. I can see through the end here where to line this up. All right, there's one. I just got it snug there. We'll get the other one done here. All right, I'm gonna take this and just put it in like this. Good torque. This one, torque. Alright, that seems to be on there pretty good. Just double checking here. Yeah, that's on there. Alright, that's on there real well. Alright, so now, because this has some play in it, the challenge I was having was when this slides down on here, you can slide it on there and get it lined up, but then you can't get to these screws. Tighten them up. Because they're underneath this guy. What I decided to do was I designed a really quick down and dirty 3D alignment tool. 3D alignment tool. It slides on there. You can see it's got a little indent on right around there. So if this is sitting off, so it doesn't want to sit all the way, but just do that and it sits right down in there. So now I can come in and tighten this up. Now this guy's still a slight bit of play, so I'm just going to tighten down a couple of those, take that back off, and just double check this before I tighten them real down. But so you can slide right on there. Sweet! So we'll tighten these down now. That is on there now. I don't anticipate those will be backing off anytime soon. Just one hopes not anyway. Okay, now we got that. Next piece I'm going to put on is this guy. And according to the CAD, it's got this cut out toward the back, but I don't have the spring yet. I actually ordered one off of AliExpress, and when it gets in, then I'm going to, when it gets in, then I will see if that's going to work okay. So we'll put these screws in here now. And by the way, before you put all this together, if you are making your own parts or even having them made and then they're not coming tapped, make sure you remember to tap all these holes and everything. I did. I remember to do it, but it doesn't go without saying here. All right, there's the carrier bearing. So this piece will turn, and this will be a static piece, and it'll do this. Okay, so then the next piece that goes on here is this part. But before we put this part on, we've got to put this part on. So this will mount onto here. And then you also have this part as well. This part will mount onto here. So we got a few pieces here we got to put together. And I'll talk about this piece just for a second. So this was quite the challenge, this little gear here. But one of the things I wanted to put it upside down. One of the things I wanted to show was on this gear, I did do a little bit of a countersink here, because whenever this goes down in here, let's put it this way, once the belt's on there and everything, so once it's in this assembly and you got the gear on there and you're trying to run the bolt through, I was having a hard time because I was hitting right at the edge of the hole. So I put that countersink in there so it'll slide in, it'll guide it into that hole. So something I did on my build, that's not necessarily in the CAD. And then that just slips on there, and then this slips down like that. Obviously with the belt on first. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and put this piece on first. It'll be likely that this piece will have to be readjusted, and a lot of stuff will have to happen once I get the spring in and all this other things, but we're just going to piece all this together so it's together and the parts are all together. It just makes it a lot easier when you come back to revisit part of the project, that you don't have to go hunt down all the screws and everything in order to get it going. Screw that in there. Screw that in there. I'm sure I tighten these down. Alright. Snug that. Snug that. That's how it was supposed to have worked. See, nice and smooth. Alright, so we'll go ahead and just tighten that down. Tighten that down. Now, let's put this onto here, like this. Now, I bought the wrong screws. I bought 7/8 instead of 3/4, but this hole in this part here is deep enough that it'll take the 7/8. So that's what we're going to use. One thing I'm not about on this project is that rebuying parts. I do not want to rebuy parts. Got enough parts to buy to have to rebuy them. See, nice and snug. There we go. And they're nice. Now this part actually is directional. This is longer than this part, so this is really the top part. That doesn't really matter until you go to connect to the other side, but that is what it is. Now we can put this together. Actually, on this one, I actually lined the pin to where it was horizontal. This one looks like I've done it a little bit of an angle. It really doesn't matter, but this will just slide on there like this. And then the pin, you actually have to modify the pin's head, take one side off so it'll sit in here flush. Then you just take this pin, drop it in here, get in your home, and there we go. It's on there. Okay, so one thing about the pin, so I got the spring return pin like they have in the CAD. There's nothing wrong with that one. You probably get away with the ball one. Ball one might be a little better. But one thing I want to show you about that, because I ran into this and I didn't think I was ever going to get this thing back apart. I'll leave the outer off here to show you. But basically when this pin goes through, like that. So here's the problem. You go to take this pin back out. You push this in. Like that. If you've got this facing upward, you can see that just sprung back up and you can't get it out. So I was sitting here going, oh my gosh, how am I going to get this pin out of here? Because I had all this assembled and you can't get to the inside once that's on. The only way you could possibly, if you had some sort of low profile wrench, you could take these out. But even then, I don't think you can, because if you look at it, well, you could take them out enough to get this away, but it'd still be a real pain. Then I realized that all you had to do was pivot this part like that. It comes out. So there you go. All right, so this one, we'll just go ahead and throw it back together so it's all together. And as soon as it finds the hole, get in your hole. Listen, after going around and around with this thing, figured out what it was. Had nothing to do with the parts not being interchangeable. It basically had to do with the fact that when I made this part, this hole was not dead center. So when I put this part on here, gosh dang it, now that's having a hard time coming on and off there. I have a solution for that. Just sand this real quick. A little 400 grit sandpaper does wonders on material like this. Makes it nice and smooth. Just like that. Well, I say just like that. Why aren't you lining up now? Come on. There we go. And then this pin should go right through now. Come on. I took some finagling. I didn't want to record it all. I got it in there though. Look, nice and tight. Nice and tight. Very nice and tight. So pretty stoked about that. Noticing there's a gap here, but not here. So this race has gotten crooked, which is not a big deal. I'll push that back straight before we get the spring put in there. But yeah, there we go. So the last thing I wanted to show was this here and putting the part that goes on this. So this is the, let's see, so this is the left, right? Correct, yeah. So this is left. So this is the cover that goes on the end here, right? Now this cover is a piece of crap. It didn't print right. I'm reprinting it right now, actually. This is supposed to go on like this. And you got to take this board off to do it. So this will come down and be on here like so. So what you have here is you're supposed to have 4 screws. So I'll have to pull all this back off to put the other screws in because I wasn't paying attention. But this will have 4 screws here. And this is why you're supposed to pay attention, because I didn't put the other screw there. Alright, so one thing you want to do before you get all this put together is you want to replace these 4 screws here. So that way when you get ready to put this guy on, that you can do that. Because once you put all this other stuff on here, you can't get to several of these screws. And one of the things I had to do is when I bought these, the heads of them are too big to go down into the hole. So I took this and I just put it right on my belt sander and I just gave it a little twirl. And it took just enough material off for these to sink down in there. So we'll screw these down. So once that's all the way down in there, I'll take these nuts off of the two that I already had in there. This one off. And then with the front, like, well, I got it backwards. Actually goes on like this. Just like that. Alright, so after you go through the painful process of putting all four of those nuts on, might even have to do a little sanding like I did on the corner there, or to get it on. Then you can put this board back. And it's not too difficult to do that. Take the screws out. And then it just sits back on here like so. It actually goes like this. Yeah. Magnets go in here. I don't recall if I had those yet or not. And then this cover. It's on there. Like that. Went back, fast forward, and got these put on there. So definitely make that your first step. Put this on there. Obviously, you got to be very careful once you put it on there, especially if you paint it like I did on the back side here, so you don't mess it up. The other thing I would also recommend is probably not even putting in. You might want to dry fit all this to make sure everything's great, but really probably shouldn't even bother trying to put the full thing together until you have the covers that go on here, because you just want to make sure, like these two are going to be pretty much where they're going to be. In this one, I got the gap out of it. Once I tightened that down, I didn't have screws in there. That fits nicely now. But as you can see here, I don't have any holes on this one yet. So I'm waiting for the covers, and then I'll make the holes on that one. But, you know, the positioning here, the width where this actually sits, is determined by the shaft. So if, you know, you got to adjust that shaft up and down, you probably don't want to Loctite it until you know that this is all sitting together with the covers. So hopefully I won't run into much of a situation with this one, because I do have a little bit of a gap here. We'll just have to see. I mean, when I get the covers, I'll know, but there's the left and the right. And so there it is. Yeah, so let's, so then this is the cover that goes on here. And this is the painted one, so it'll look nice and clean. So there you go. So there's the right shoulder for Mr. Johnny 5, and that's the left one. So sorry for the choppiness of this video, but I thought I at least got a few good points in that hopefully helps you with this build.